Welcome to the Muscle Building Mastery Podcast, where guys that want to build muscle come to learn how to do it properly. We understand that there's more to building muscle than mindlessly throwing weights around and chugging mass gainer shakes. We're not interested in quick fixes or anabolic assistance. We're interested in mastering the art, science and skill set required to stack on real muscle and strength. My name's Andy Clements, and for the last 12 years I've devoted my life to figuring out how guys like us who don't have amazing genetics, don't have 5 hours a day to spend in the gym, and don't want to take steroids as a shortcut can build insane amounts of muscle and strength in weeks and months, not years and decades. This podcast is the result of all the lessons I've learned along the way, and it will give you the blueprint to building more muscle in less time. To get you started, head to www.musclebuildingmastery.net to download your free 6-week workout plan. Hey guys, what's going on? This is Andy Clements back here with another episode of the Muscle Building Mastery Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to continue with our journey around the body, which we've got, I think, maybe three podcasts in already on the series of muscle building spotlights. And today we're going to do a spotlight on lats training. So training the latissimus dorsi, as the full name goes. And if you don't know what the lats are the muscle on the sort of outer portion of your back. Okay, they're the muscle that you train on pull downs and pull ups and things like that. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about specifically what the lats do and how to train them if you want to actually grow them. Okay, so the lats are a muscle that I spent a long time trying and failing miserably to train. Lats were probably the last thing that I actually was able to see any kind of growth in my body, because I really struggled for a long time, because naturally I didn't move in such a way that allowed my lats to grow without having to think about how I was moving or address how I was moving, because I had quite unstable shoulders. So I sort of bounced in and out of tension and could never really feel my lats when I was training. You know, when you're doing like any kind of lat-based pull down or pull up or row or something like that, where you try to target the lats, I just could not feel my lats whatsoever. And it took me a long time, a lot of practice, a lot of frustration, a lot of studying, a lot of going to seminars, hiring coaches, things like that, and you know, having my head in textbooks and videos and courses. And you know, eventually you sort of get your head around what it is, and it's not quite as complicated as it sounds. So hopefully in this podcast I'll be able to give you a bit of a foot in the door of how you can start training your lats and actually feeling them, and give you something to try out next time you're in the gym training lats. So again, there's 5 points we're going to cover here. We'll cover 5 points on every one of these mini-series podcast episodes on the Spotlight series, and we relate it to each muscle group. So if you haven't heard the other muscle groups yet, then the previous ones will obviously already be up. I think there's one on chest, there's one on biceps and triceps, and obviously if you're listening to this in the future, then there'll probably be the rest of them as well. You know, there'll probably be the shoulders and the quads and the glutes and the hamstrings, the calves and the things like that. So let's crack on with lats then. So the first point that I want to talk about with lats training, in order to grow your lats, is execution. And we talk about execution with every single one. Talk about execution with every single muscle, because it's so important. Okay, the way you move dictates whether you actually put tension through the muscle you're trying to train or not. And if you don't put tension through the muscle you're trying to train, then you don't grow the muscle you're trying to train. It's quite simple. Like, tension is the stimulus that's required for growth. So execution is, or form or technique, whatever you want to call it, is the way that we ensure that tension, which is the stimulus for growth, goes through the right area. So in order to perform a movement properly, we first need to look at the function of the muscle we're trying to train. So like I've said on previous podcasts, but if you listen to the first one I listened to, then I'll sort of explain it again. The function of a muscle is important because every muscle has a specific job in the body. All muscles sort of bring two bones closer together or further apart, right? And if we want to grow a certain muscle in our body, we need to be aware of what the job of that muscle is. Why does that muscle exist in the first place? And in order to grow it, we just need to work it through its intended function, okay? So this is quite simple, and this is applicable across the board, whether you're training lats, whether you're training biceps or shoulders or calves or abs or quads or whatever you're training. Every single muscle has a function, and if you train that function under load, you will grow. So the function for the lats, in order to understand the function for these, I want to explain where the two attachment points of the muscle are, okay? So the two attachment points of the muscle are near the lower back. Okay, so that's where the muscle is what's called originates. So near the lower back, the muscle originates, and the muscle then stretches across and inserts into the top of the humerus or upper arm bone. Okay, so it kind of stretches across your back, out, so the wide part of your back, and it inserts into the top of your upper arm. Okay, so just kind of like near your armpit, right? So in order for us to work this muscle through its intended function, we need to pull our humerus from above our head, pull our upper arm from above our head down towards our lower back, because that's bringing the insertion point close to the origin point. It's bringing the place where the muscle attaches into the top of the upper arm close to the place where it originates in the lower back. So the muscle's therefore getting shorter, right? And that's how a muscle contracts, gets short. Okay, does that make sense? So that's essentially I mean, if you apply that thinking to any muscle in the body, you've pretty much cracked the whole game of training, right? That's all you're doing. You're making a muscle short and then you're making a muscle long, right? And that's like stretching and contracting. So that's how it applies to the lat. So therefore, the function of the lat is to pull the upper arm, the humerus, down and close to the lower back, kind of the mimicking the movement that you do on a lat pull down or a pull up, where you drive your elbow down and close to your ribs. That's the lat doing that movement. Okay, so if you didn't have a muscle there called the lats, you wouldn't be able to do that movement. So that's the function, and that's what we need to keep in mind every time we're training the lats. No matter what kind of movement we're doing for the lats, we always must remember that we're trying to pull the upper arm as close to the lower back as we possibly can without anything else moving, without arching the back, without moving the hips, without swaying around, without anything else moving. You're just trying to drive the upper arm down towards the lower back. You master that skill and you will feel the difference instantly. Within a rep of doing it, you'll feel the difference and your lat starts to fire up. Okay, so that's the execution and that's the function of the lats, and that's the most important thing to remember. Now, a useful cue that I like to use on a lat pull down or on a row that's targeting the lats or on a straight arm pull down or a pull up or whatever it is I like to tell clients to think about driving their elbows down to the pocket. So I say elbows in pockets quite a lot when people are doing lat pull downs, because that reinforces the thinking of driving the arms down, as opposed to what a lot of people do on lat pull downs and pull down movements in general. Is they often tend to swing back, lean back, and pull their elbows back, which ends up working the traps, the mid muscles of the mid back, which is what we'll do. We'll cover those muscles on the next episode of the podcast. But for now, we're talking about lats. So elbows in pockets is one useful cue that I find helps people to increase their lat engagement. But play around with it and just make sure that you are aware of the muscle function and what you're trying to actually accomplish when you do these exercises. So that's the first point. The second point is frequency, and we've talked about frequency before with other muscle groups. The lats are kind of a medium to large sized muscle. If you say back as a whole, obviously back would be quite a large sized group of muscles, the lats and the traps all encompassed. But the lats on their own, I would say like medium to large. So I wouldn't train them more than twice a week. The same as the muscles of the legs, I wouldn't train them more than twice a week. You can train them twice a week if you're just doing kind of like an upper lower split, but I wouldn't tag them on more than 2 times a week. I'd give them a little bit of recovery time. Point number 3 that we're going to cover here is strength curve. Now, again, I've talked about strength curve in every previous episode, but we're going to cover it again here. So, essentially, what a strength curve means, if you imagine like a bell curve or like the shape of a rainbow, each end of that curve, each end of that rainbow, represents a point where your muscle is weak. At one end of the curve, your muscle is fully contracted, and at the other end of the curve, your muscle is fully lengthened or fully stretched. Okay. So with the lats, the fully lengthened position will be your elbows and your arms stretched really high above your head in the same kind of position you would be in a lat pull down or a pull up, right at the sort of bottom of the movement, right? The bottom of the movement in a pull up and maybe the top of the movement in a pull down, if that makes sense. So that's the lengthened area. The fully contracted area is when your elbow is as close as possible to your lower back. Essentially, the top of the humerus is as close as possible to the lower back, where the origin and the insertion points are as close together as possible, and your muscles fully shortened. So that would be, again, something like a single arm dumbbell row or single arm cable row. You're able to get really short down there. It wouldn't probably be in a pull down, because you can get short in a pull down, but you probably can't get quite as shortened muscle as you can in a row. So those are the two areas that you're weak: when you're fully lengthened, you're fully contracted. Now, as we spoke about in the previous episodes, these two areas where you're weak, your fully lengthened and fully contracted positions, are your best opportunities for growth. So if you're not fully getting into those fully lengthened and fully contracted positions, you're really doing yourself a disservice in terms of growing your lats or growing any muscle. Apply that to any muscle, as we're doing on each episode of this mini-series here. You're really doing yourself a disservice. So I would really encourage you to get into those weakened positions, get into that fully lengthened position. And it's also, as we're going to talk about in a minute as well, with the lats are a hard muscle to feel. So the fully lengthened position is like a lot easier to feel a stretch. So I'd encourage you at the end of each rep, if you're struggling to feel your lats, to spend a couple of seconds at the end of each rep feeling the stretch and really connecting mentally with where you can feel that stretch. And then thinking about pulling the weight down from that area where you're feeling the stretch, right? They're feeling the stretch in the lats, in the outer portion of your upper back. You're feeling that stretch there, and then you're pulling down from there. And by spending a little bit of time, not all day, not 5 to 10 seconds each rep, but you're spending a second or two at the end of each rep in that fully lengthened and stretched position, you are working where you're weak. You're putting tension on the muscle where it's weak, which is your best opportunity for growth. Now, obviously, there's advantages to doing in the mid-range, but unless you're working where you're weak, especially with this muscle, with the lats, you're really gonna kneecap yourself in terms of being able to grow. So that's the third point. Make sure you master that strength curve. The fourth point, obviously, is load. Load is obviously very, very important for lats, and as it is for every muscle. Progressive overload is the underlying principle behind everything. But I'm going to strongly caveat this with lats. Please do not. I mean, this applies across the board, but definitely with lats, because they're such a hard muscle to feel. Do not add weight at the expense of A, form, and B, the sort of mind-muscle connection where you can feel the muscle working. Because if you can't feel the muscle working, chances are it's not working, okay? Or it's not working as much as it could be. And we want to really make it work as much as we can be to get the most efficiency and efficacy out of each and every rep that we do in the gym. So don't load too soon, but the point is to load. Once you've nailed that form, once you've nailed that function of the lat, and you've made sure that you can feel every single rep and you're working where you're weak, the next step is then to progress the load. There's no getting away from it. So you're starting to slowly progress, one pin up on the stack or the lat pull downs, or a few reps up on your pull-ups, or whatever it is. Eventually adding maybe a dipping belt to your pull-ups so you can load the pull-ups or something like that. Or maybe you've just started on the assisted pull-up machine and you're going to work your way down up to bodyweight pull-ups, are just doing it without the assistance. So any of those are progressions, but make sure there are progressions in there and start to load the lats, and you'll see growth. So that's the first 4 movements. The last one is specifically for the lats. Now, as I've said before, sort of sprinkled this through the whole thing. The last point I want to make on lats is that it's a really hard muscle to feel. And chances are, if you're listening to this episode, you're probably thinking the same thing. You're probably thinking, I want some advice on how to feel my lats, because every time I do a pull down or every time I train my lats in whatever way, I can't feel them. And you know, it's no coincidence that they're probably not growing if you can't feel them, right? And this is what I had happen to me for, you know, years and years and years. So it's completely normal, but you know, it is a hard muscle to feel. But the biggest piece of advice I've got for you, other than the one I've already mentioned, which is getting into that fully lengthened position and connecting with the muscle itself mentally, is to slow the reps right down. Stop rushing. You know, make sure that if in doubt, go for sort of time under tension. You know, the whole point of this is to put tension on the muscle. And if you're rushing through the reps, trying to get to a certain number, you're not putting tension on that muscle. Now, again, this applies to across the board. All of what I'm saying here is universal, but especially for the lats, because they are such a hard muscle to feel, slowing everything right down, you know, and doing 3 to maybe even 5 second negatives where you're lowering the weight back up on a pull down, or you're lowering your body weight on a pull up really slowly, and just focusing the mind on that area of your body, on the lats, on the outer portion of your upper back, and, you know, thinking through the function of the lat while you're training it. You know, I'm pulling the humerus away from my body as I lengthen the lat, and then I'm driving the humerus or the upper arm back down towards the lower back, towards the rib cage, elbows in pockets, as I contract the lat, and start to go internal with your thinking instead of just thinking about pulling a bar to your chest or pulling your chin up to a bar or doing whatever it is you're doing, and start to think about the muscles and the biomechanics of your body as opposed to just thinking about getting the reps out. And again, this is all universal advice. It really, really is. I mean, everything I'm saying here is kind of universal advice on this mini-series, but I do want to sort of apply it to each and every muscle. And with lats, it's definitely applicable to slow everything right down and think about the function massively, because I've seen so many guys that are just sort of swinging around on lat pull downs and not achieving anything whatsoever, least of all growing their lats. So I hope that was useful, guys. Don't forget to drop me a review and let me know what you think. Drop any comments. That'd be really, really appreciated. It really does help to get the word out about this podcast to people who are looking to build more muscle and push their training forward. And subscribe, because we're really pushing this podcast right now. We're really going to be releasing new episodes, preferably every day if I can. But, you know, definitely a few times a week if not. So I'm going to try and give you as much good content as I can. And if you want some more help, if you're interested in getting things to the next level, then go and check out andyclementsfitness.co.uk, and you can see all the different ways that I can help you on that website. That's Andy Clements, ANDYCLEMENTS, fitness.co.uk, and I will speak to you next time on the Muscle Building Mastery podcast. If you're ready to stop wasting time in the gym and start mastering the skill of muscle building, go check out www.musclebuildingmastery.net to download your free 6-week muscle building workout plan. I have specifically formulated this workout plan to take you through the 3 stages of mastering your body, layering on a more advanced training methodology each week as you progress. That means that regardless of where you are with your training right now, this plan will push you forward and help you stack on more muscle and strength in just 6 weeks. So head to www.musclebuildingmastery.net now to grab your free 6-week workout plan.